set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T., Commander.
Maximum warp!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. I'm UrzaMaster. Joining me as always is Lord Uther. And from the Q Continuum, we have Fert Derby. Welcome, gentlemen. We are back at Starfleet Academy Headquarters, Section 32, maybe? Whatever we want to call it. And we're joining up with the crew of Strange New Worlds on the USS Enterprise. And we've got an interesting one to talk about today. We've got 4.5 Vulcans on tap. And we've talked many times on the show about the brilliant economy of words and the writing. And often we mention the humor of these episodes. And this one for me, I'm gonna just venture it out right now and say this is one of the more humorous episodes that I had plenty of Vulcan-y chuckles. But Fert Derby, from that Q Continuum, what's the Q say about 4.5 Vulcans?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, the best part of this episode is its title, 4.5 Vulcans. We had Jordan Canning as our director. Last time we saw Jordan's work, it was in Wedding Bell Blues, the second episode of Season 3. That was co-written by Dana Horgan and showrunner Henry Alonzo Myers. One of the few credits this year. He actually has screen credit for an episode. Dana co-wrote Space Adventure Hour, which was Jonathan Frakes' loving tribute to the board game Clue and 1930s style Hollywood and entertainment, 1960s style, the whole shebang. So we definitely could tell from the title and the people behind it this week that we were in for another yuck fest. And by yucks, I mean laughs. But gentlemen, that brings us to our first impressing point. Irrespective of this episode's merits, which included Patton Oswalt as Doug, and I must say, I will get it out there right now before the Continuum snatches me. I could have seen an entire hour of Ethan Peck and Patton Oswalt debating human foibles, cultures, traditions. Hopefully you stuck around, Warp Core viewers, Star Trek fans, and saw the little tag on this episode. It lasted about 3 or 4 minutes, and it was almost constructed like a series of outtakes. And boy, was it absolute comic gold. The timing and the writing and all of that. Those two should take that act on the road. But that leads me to our larger point, gentlemen. We started the season 3 with the tense hegemony part 2. Then we immediately went to Wedding Bell Blues. We introduced Trelane. We introduced a John Delancey voiceover as Q. We had the hijinks surrounding various nuptials and romantic couples. And as I recall, we gave very high warp cores, the three of us, to Wedding Bell Blues. Then it was only 2 episodes later that we got Jonathan Frakes' Space Adventure Hour, which, as we said, was a delightful and little kooky breaking of the fourth wall. We had holodecks and characters behaving differently, dressing differently, and so on. And we also gave that high marks because Jonathan Frakes has Star Trek DNA in his bloodstream, and we knew that he would do something fresh and irreverent and break the mold, as he does in many of these episodes when he directs for the franchise. We only have 10 episodes a season of Strange New Worlds, and of course we've campaigned for more. Long gone are the days of Next Generation having 24, 26 episodes in a season. But when you only have 10, and now 30% of that season is devoted to, let's say, thinking out of the box, non non-fully dramatic episodes. When when you have 3 episodes in a season that kind of focus on the comedy, pushing the laughs and the hilarity forward, it at least makes you take pause. It doesn't mean it's not welcome. It doesn't mean that it's not something that we enjoy seeing. I mean, we don't want the show to feel stale or just always hitting the same notes on the piano. But in the same breath, I mean, I guess I question the utility of having this particular, almost madcap farce when we have a Wedding Bell Blues, for example, or we have Jonathan Frakes doing Space Adventure Hour. I just felt like as we come near the end of the season, some of those Trek episodes that have stood out to us in the original series and the Bermanverse and Picard and so forth, I was like, is this one too many per season because we're only having a short 10-episode run? Would this have felt completely at home in a 24, 26-episode season when you could have a little bit more breathing room? I like the episode. I think my one quibble on it was that the music choices, the underscore for this one was almost telegraphing, hey, we're going to be funny this episode. And I thought the Lon subplot of becoming more warlike and having Kirk and Scotty try to foil her, I like it. I like how it resolves. I like how it gives us Scotty and Kirk together and cementing their bond. But I almost wanted that to have a little more meat on the bone. I almost wanted that to bring the drama forward. And so these were just sort of, like I say, random thoughts. If we didn't have Wedding Bell Blues or we didn't have Space Adventure Hour, I wouldn't bat an eyelash. But I just felt like, is Trek becoming a little too light in a tight season? I mean, so where are we group-wise? What did you guys think of 4.5 Vulcans as an episode, or the idea that they want to continue to swirl comedy?
I like this episode, but I think that brings up a really good point. Is there's a bit of camp, and it's not unwelcome. I think the humor, the comedy of the episode was a nice irreverence. I'm not against it, but it's not a comic show per se. So you're right. 30% of your episodes thus far this season are funny. I mean, every episode has an element of humor, which is nice, but there didn't feel like there were stakes in this one. On leaning towards, obviously the Romulan aspect of Vulcan mythology or evolution is kind of interesting, but they could have done more with it, and obviously they can't sort of spoil the whole Romulan thing, so I thought they played it up well, but it really, like, the whole, we're going to remain Vulcan forever now, it didn't, it didn't feel like there were stakes involved. It's not like they were completely jeopardizing a mission. I think they could have still done the Romulan thing and still had the comedy and then somehow wormed in a high stakes, captain negotiation or something where the human element is what was desperately needed, but the Vulcan element was about to get them into, interstellar war or something. And it's not like you also have to have a death in every episode or, a horror sequence. So it didn't necessarily disappoint, but I think it did somewhat lack a bit of that punch and was a little more punchy, which, again, it's okay. I think in a 24, 26 episode season, it's perfect. I mean, I think it'd be a great fit. 10 episodes, though, I want to get some more canon chew in there. Like, we only have so much time with Captain Pike, obviously, and now knowing that there's a terminus date for this, series, this crew, I kind of want more of the, sort of bonesaw action where it's like, wow, Pike, at some point, I want to see the episode where Pike has to struggle with the fact that, he still knows this is all coming. And we haven't really gotten that in a while. And, as much as a person can compartmentalize and there's other things going on, and in the next episode we get a little more drama, of course, but this is something where I feel there's a shortcoming. You're this deep into your third season and you haven't gone back to Pike knows he's gonna die someday. Like that, it's coming up relatively quick. It's hard for me to wrap my head around, like, why haven't you just had one episode where you deal with that, even if it's just one sequence or one conversation. Again, economy of words being what it is. Where is it? And I'm not against the 4.5 Vulcans either. Like I liked this episode. And anytime you can work Patton Oswalt into anything, you should. Because he delivers an absolute brilliant performance. And I love the idea of a Vulcan named Doug. It was like the comedy aspect was a little overbearing just because it's our third one now this season. But at the same time, I'm like, but that's brilliant. Like I would be upset if that idea was one that didn't get used and I found out about it. I'd be like, oh, come on, that would have been great. But does it have a place here and now? Unless they're softening us up for some sort of a big series finale or season finale, I'm not sure.
I quickly, before Lord Uther sounds in, not enough praise can be showered also on Rebecca Romaine, who understood the assignment and played that just absolutely right. I actually had a little bit of a thing with the 4 Vulcans. Like Anson Mount is fabulous as Pike. I love him. I love how he brings that dry, wry humor to it. But I almost felt like he was probably pushing it a little too much here with his, cleanliness and so forth. I didn't think all of them as Vulcans, with the exception, let's say, of Lon. I didn't really feel like it was net positive in terms of that. It was Spock's reaction to them and the crew's reaction to them. But Una getting all twisted up around Doug and how she played that through there. I mean, again, we could always use more Una. And this one played right to her strengths as an actress and so forth to be able to do, because we've seen her be tough and get mad at Ortegas and so forth, but here was a chance for her to kind of like, it kind of reminds me of Dr. Crusher, perhaps in The Big Goodbye or something. Like it just gave her a chance to kind of let her hair down, literally and figuratively. And yes, more of that, please.
Yeah, at first I thought this episode was going to be a mixture of comedy and seriousness, and that was bothering me. And then it got to the point that I realized they were just going for the straight comedy of it. And then I accepted it more. That's what they were going for. Maybe even the term I respected it more, that's what they were doing, that this was just going to be a flat-out, straight comedic episode. Pike reminded me of Beldar from Coneheads. I was waiting for him to say Mabs. Yes. Like I was waiting for that the entire time because he was playing it, so stiff in a sense. I feel like the Una plot line saved this, quite frankly. Look, in my opinion, this is the first time they swung for the fences and maybe hit a single with it. I mean, I think they were just going for it, and they kind of, for me at least, it missed the mark a little bit because we only, again, to both your points, we only have so much time. And unless I'm going to get something out of this episode that's going to give us a push forward, I don't have an episode to waste, is kind of how I feel about that. So, again, overall, good episode, just a waste of time. I hate to say it. I think it could have been utilized a little differently. It's kind of how I looked at it.
In this mythology, then, in this timeline, in this set, am I reading it right that Scotty does not like to drink? Because I feel like he was at a thing at Pike's and he was like, oh no, I never touched the stuff, and now Kirk's like saying, hey, I don't know. Is that the thing? So that by the time we get to the original series and the movies and stuff, it's like, oh, I'm very comfortable with Kentucky bourbon. Or
It seems like Kirk is the one that's kind of pushing him towards the drink. Almost like Kirk is a bad influence on Scotty. And I'm not upset by it. I love that they have this chemistry, and it is very reminiscent of Bill Shatner and James Doohan. So I'm on board with what I'm seeing with that, and I'm with Lord Uther. I think Una's storyline in this episode really saves it.
Yeah, and now that it's for some reason I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize, but I think the other thing that saves it, and I don't know, it hit me when you guys started talking about this, is the episode or the very last the scene with Scotty and Kirk. I really think this is leaning into ending this, and I think they're going for it. And from what I've been reading on the internet, I think they're going for it too, to do a year one, and they're laying the groundwork for it, which I'm fine with it. That piece I do like. I feel like it's evolving naturally. It's not being forced on us. Like all of a sudden they're all just on the Enterprise together. They're trying to make some sense of it and how this could have developed. That's a good point. I mean, that's like a good piece of this as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think and that's why in some respects you do kind of have to go for it in these episodes, because you have to set up these situations. And yeah, I mean, this isn't like earth-shattering Trek. It's still good though. Like at no point was I disappointed with the episode. Like I was happy with everything that was happening, but does it carry the gravity of other episodes? Does it have the punch of a Wedding Bell Blues? Not exactly. But I also think that, in some respects, they're trying to give us that sort of ebb and flow of high drama and comedy. And I think this episode's supposed to soften us up for the next one. And we'll talk more about that next time. But, gentlemen, I think we've talked a little bit differently about this one than we have on episodes in the past. So I'm excited to hear what our Warp Core ratings are. From the Q Continuum, Fert Derby, where do you fall in your Warp Core ratings this week?
right, my misgivings about, again, maybe overdoing it on the hijinks side and that underscore. I think we talked about this on the original series too. When you have to tell people, hey, this is light, using your musical cues, sometimes that's probably you could probably shift that and downshift it a few percentage points. I think this is a 5. I think this is a good episode of Star Trek. I think you can watch it completely on its own in a vacuum and say, boy, that was fun. I appreciated what they did. But I think as we're going through the sequential run of a season, it just feels a little too close to Space Adventure Hour and Wedding Bell Blues to really leave much of an impression beyond the surfacey. Oh yeah, that was cute, and so that's where I am. I agree with UrzaMaster. There's nothing wrong with this episode. It's kind of stacked a little too close together to the previous lighter moments.
So it's going to sound weird. If I was to take it out of this series, like take it out of sequence and just judge it on its own without an impact on the series in a sense, I would probably give it maybe a 5.5. Okay. Probably a 5. I'm probably going to go, because I do feel it's a slight waste of time in a sense that it didn't story forward it. I'm probably going to go I'm going to go 4.5. Not that it's bad.
4.5?
It just, yeah, I don't like that it didn't. Time is precious. And I just feel like time was kind of wasted on this, and it almost seems like it's like funny episode, serious, funny, serious, funny. Maybe you do one or two of these little comedic ones a season and move on. I just, again, did not seem to help the overall story go forward.
Would you rather have this one or Wedding Bell Blues? I mean, if those are the two, forget
Wedding
the
Bell
Jonathan.
Blues.
Okay, because in terms of what it gave you, because I mean the Jonathan Frakes, I just consider him like David Lynch when it comes to like, directing. Like, he can just do whatever he wants, and I'm there for it. But if you could only have one of the two, which one do you think gave more to the show this season?
I think Wedding Bell Blues.
Okay.
Especially. Yeah, I think Wedding Bell Blues gives me more.
Got it.
I agree, and I think we're getting a lot more callbacks to the original series this season, which is nice. That's where 4.5 Vulcans kind of left me wanting a little more, because I know they're trying to speak to sort of Spock's background. They keep giving him crap the whole episode about being half Vulcan, and I have to admit, like, the joke got a little tired pretty quick. But that's the point, right? Spock says, Vulcans can be jerks, and yeah, they were, big time. Like, this whole episode, I still liked it. I think maybe more. I wouldn't go as low as a 4.5. I think this is a 5. If I pulled it out of context, and let's say this was in a season where maybe all you got otherwise was Wedding Bell Blues, this would be very welcome. I think 3 is a little on the heavy side. Not that I'm complaining, but I do think there's a little more they could have done here. Again, adding some stakes, just something a little more tense than sort of the interpersonal drama. I mean, there was so much about this episode that I really loved, like him re-cleaning the kitchen. And the whole exchange between the two, the captain and the admiral, and I always forget her name, Battelle, getting pissed and then yelling at both of them. I thought that was really clever, and I mean, those moments are great, but that's all this episode really was these sort of clever, odd moments that, other than one of them going Romulan, which I still want some more La'an, like, how are they going to resolve her story? I mean, she's a Noonien Singh. Like, there's got to be something there more than what we're getting. And I feel like they could have almost worked that in and given it a little more tension.
If Lon would have taken... Because this is what I was waiting to happen, was her to commandeer the Enterprise. And maybe you have the other Vulcans find some logic in that. And so they really feel like they can't stop her, or they shouldn't really stop her, and give it some justification, and keep that comedy going. And I would have felt, I think, better about it. But it seemed like they had all these little ideas, and they patchworked it together into this episode. And it also kind of calls back. What was that?
Like a writer's room fever dream.
Yeah, and it's almost like they just took the whole and here's my other little issue too. And again, this is so minute. We love the series, we know that, but think about when Spock became fully human, right? This episode flipped in a sense, but there was something on the line for that, right? And so I just think it would have played out better if we would have had, to your point, had that threat of something happening.
Yeah, and that could have been a great sell. Is she's taking over the Enterprise. The human turned Vulcans are like, it's logical. She's the most capable among us. There is an imminent threat of the Gorn, and then it takes Spock and this Doug and the Admiral and these sort of like cast of characters who seem so unlikely. Kirk and Scotty would have been a huge one to try and sell that on. Like, Kirk has to unite this sort of, motley crew to take the Enterprise back, and then they pull it off, but it doesn't break the humor. Like, it's still high stakes, but there could have been some, some one-liners or some daffiness to it that made it, not high drama, but clear stakes. Again, these are quibbles in what is a perfectly good episode, but not everything can be a 10 out of 10, or in case of Warp Core, 7 out of 7. And we do have to be somewhat critical. Again, this could win an Emmy for all I care. Like, this is a great episode compared to most TV shows. So Paramount, please don't cut us out of the payroll. Not that we're on it yet, but you should put us on it. But yeah, this is definitely for me a 5. And I look forward to what they do in the future. Like, the one thing I will say is that anytime I've had even slight disappointment with something, they knock me out of my socks in the next episode, or in a couple episodes, because there's so much they could do. And that's almost the disappointing thing about knowing that, it's going to be 5 seasons and done. There's so much more this crew could do that would be tremendous. And I'm still hoping that maybe in the end this leads to a movie. I know they talked about it and kind of squashed that, but I still think there's possibility. But for you out there, beyond the Q Continuum and beyond pending rebrand, make sure you're subscribed to follow us in all of our Strange New Worlds and all things Star Trek, as well as our other shows. But we've got a lot more exciting things coming up for you in the next episodes of the Warp Core podcast. Special thanks to Fert Derby from the Q Continuum. Lord Uther, as always, I'm UrzaMaster. Go out and make it so.